Elon, I, the Tetragrammaton, the Lord God Most High, I do exercise thee and do powerfully command thee, O Spirit. Elon, I, the Tetragrammaton, the Lord God Most High, I do exercise thee and do powerfully command.
In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Hello, I'm John Towers, and this is the Abracast. As you know, we've been chipping away through The Art of War by this Chinese general Sun Tzu. It was written like 2,500 years ago. And I got this book in, it had to be the early 90s, and I mean, it's a mess. I've been carrying it with me, writing little notes down in the margins, highlighting stuff, and I don't think it's a secret why we're talking about this book, you know, looking out our windows. You know, I'm kind of recording from the dojo of the end of the world, chronicling the end of Western civilization, you know, to put it in like not uncertain terms. I seriously started prepping. I don't mean like I got a couple extra, you know, boxes of Cheez-Its and like I have implemented a plan, and I've spent a small fortune getting my shit together, because, you know, wherever you look, I just see bad shit coming your way. So I thought, hey, I haven't consulted the great Sun Tzu in a while. So I thought that this is something that we could do on the show, sort of together, as sort of like a companion piece to our End of Western Civilization series. It seems like we've been chipping our way through. So I had to end in the middle of a chapter last episode. I want to get right back into it. I believe Sun Tzu was talking about... what was he talking about? Sun Tzu was talking about the 9 situations. And I believe the one that we are in the middle of is rapidity. So we're just going to jump right into it, right where I left off last week, and we're just going to get right back into this. I have my weapon of mass distraction at hand, this delicate formula being held with like a whole tray of ice in my vessel of the art. You can check out Abracast.com if you're interested in one of these bad boys. I'm getting ready to go out of town, so I'm actually be packing this up when we're done here and putting it in my bag, getting ready to go. And if just as like a side note, if you want to throw some prepping suggestions my way, it seems like there are a few of you guys out there that are a little bit ahead of me as far as the prepping and the planning goes, and that's really what we're talking about here when we read The Art of War. We're looking at, well, one of the things that's important, it's going to be important, is leadership stuff. But also it's about supply chain management, prioritization, troop movements. Like right now I'm in a mode, I'm getting my hands on like paper maps of the areas that that my bug out plan includes. In case the GPS and the phones are unreliable, I got my old trusty. Well, I got a new kind of cheap compass. I want to get another one. Anyhow, so these are the kind of things. This is why we're consulting Sun Tzu. It's through the lens of sort of getting our shit ready for whatever is going to happen. So here we go. The 9 situations. I believe the one we're talking about now is rapidity. And Sun Tzu says, throw your soldiers in positions whence there is no escape, and they will prefer death to flight. If they will face death, there is nothing they may not achieve. Officers and men alike will put forth their utmost strength. Soldiers in desperate straits lose the sense of fear. There is no place of refuge. They will stand firm. If they are in the heart of a hostile country, they will show a stubborn front. If there is no help for it, they will fight hard. Thus, without waiting to be marshaled, the soldier will be constantly on the alert, and without waiting to be asked, they will do your will. Without restrictions, they will be faithful. Without giving orders, they can be trusted. Prohibit the taking of omens and do away with superstitious doubts. Then, until death itself comes, no calamity need be feared. If soldiers are not overburdened with money, then it is not because they have a distaste for riches. If their lives are not unduly long, it is not because they are disinclined to longevity. On the day they are ordered out to battle, your soldiers may weep, some sitting up bedwetting their garments, and some lying down, letting the tears run down their cheeks, not because that they are afraid, but because all have embraced the firm resolution to do or die. But let them once be brought to bay, and they will display the courage of a Chuan Chu or a Sao Kui. So this reminds me of Band of Brothers, right? There's the one episode with Private Bly, and he's going through some, PTSD stuff, I guess they would call it nowadays, hysterical blindness and other such stuff, and he runs into this one, like, Captain America type of guy. He's the guy that gets control of Easy Company for a little while. He takes control of it after Foxhole Norman fucks everything up. Anyhow, he's talking to the dude, and he goes, "You got it all wrong, man. What you have to do is realize that you're already dead. You're already in the meat grinder, so quit being afraid." Chuan Chu, a native of the Wu state and a contemporary with Sun Tzu himself, was employed by Kung Tzu Quang, better known as Hulu Wang, to assassinate his sovereign Wang Lao with a dagger that he secreted in the belly of a fish served up at a banquet. He succeeded in his attempt, but was immediately hacked to pieces by the king's bodyguard. This was in 515 BC. The other hero, referred to Sao Kui, performed the exploit that had made his name famous 166 years earlier in 681 BC. Lu had been thrice defeated by Qi and was just about to conclude a treaty surrendering a large slice of territory when Sao Kui suddenly seized Huan Kung, the Duke of Qi, as he stood on the altar steps and held a dagger against his chest. None of the Duke's retainers dare move a muscle, and Sao Kui proceeded to demand full restitution, declaring that Lu was being unjustly treated because she was a smaller and weaker state. Huan Kung, in peril of his life, was obliged to consent, whereupon Sao Kui flung away his dagger and quietly resumed his place amid the terrified assemblage without having so much as changed color. As was to be expected, the Duke wanted afterwards to repudiate the bargain, but his wise old counselor Quan Chung pointed out to him that the danger of breaking his word. And the upshot was that the bold stroke regained for Lu the whole of what she had lost in 3 pitched battles. The skillful tactician may be likened to the Schwajan. Now, the Schwajan is a snake that is found in the Chuang Mountains. Strike at its head and you will be attacked by its tail, and strike at its tail and you will be attacked by its head. Strike in the middle and you will be attacked by head and tail both. Asked if an army can be made to imitate the Schwajan, the answer, yes. For the men of Wu, the men of Wei are enemies, yet if they are crossing a river in the same boat and are caught by a storm, they will come to each other's assistance just as the left hand helps the right. It is not enough to put trust in the teaching of horses and the burying of chariot wheels in the ground. It's not enough to render flight impossible by such mechanical means. You will not succeed unless your men have tenacity and the unity of purpose, and above all, a spirit of sympathetic cooperation. This is a lesson which can be learned from the Schwajan. The principle on which to manage an army is to set up one standard of courage that all must reach. How to make the best of both strong and weak is a question involving the proper use of ground. The skillful generals conduct his army just as though he were leading a single man by the hand. It is the business of the general to be quiet and thus ensure secrecy, upright and just, and thus maintain order. He must be able to mystify his officers and men by false reports and appearances and thus keep them in total ignorance. In the year AD 88, Pan Chiao took the field with 25,000 men from Khoatan and the other Central Asian states with the object of crushing Yarkand. The king of Kucha replied by dispatching his chief commander to succor the place with an army drawn from the kingdoms of Wensu, Kumu, and Weatao, totaling 50,000 men. Pian Chao summoned his officers and also the king of Khoatan to council of war and said, "Our forces are now outnumbered and able to make headway against an enemy. The best plan, then, is for us to separate and disperse, each in a different direction. The king of Khoatan will march away by the easterly route, and I will then return myself to the west, and let us wait until the evening drum has sounded and then start." Pian Chao now secretly released the prisoners whom he had taken alive, and the king of Kucha was thus informed of his plan. Much elated by the news, the latter set off at once at the head of 10,000 horsemen to bar Pan Chao's retreat to the west, while the king of Wensu rode eastwards with 9,000 horses in order to intercept the king of Khoatan. As soon as Pan Chao knew that the other 2 chieftains had gone, he called his divisions together, got them well in hand, and at the cockcrow hurled them against the army of Yarkand. As it lay encamped, the barbarians, panic-stricken, fled in confusion and were closely pursued by Pan Chao. Over 5,000 heads were brought back as trophies, besides immense spoils in the form of horses and cattle and valuables of every description. Yarkand then capitulated Kucha, and from the other kingdoms drew off their respective forces. From that time forward, Piao Chan's prestige completely overawed the countries of the West. By altering his arrangements and changing his plans, the skillful general keeps the enemy without definite knowledge. By shifting his camp and taking surreptitious routes, he prevents the enemy from anticipating his purpose. At the critical moment, the leader of an army acts like one who has climbed up a height and then kicks away the ladder behind him. He carries his men deep into hostile territory before he shows his hand. He burns the boats and breaks his cooking pots like a shepherd driving a flock of sheep. He drives his men this way and that, and none know whither he is going. To muster his host to bring it into danger. This may be termed the business of the general. The different measures suited to the 9 varieties of ground, the expediency of aggressive and defensive tactics, the fundamental laws of human nature, these are the things that must certainly be studied. When invading hostile territory, the general principle is that the penetrating deeply brings cohesion. Penetrating but a short way means dispersion. When you leave your own country behind, you take your army across neighboring territories, you find yourself on critical ground. When there are means of communications on all 4 sides, the ground is one of intersecting highways. When you penetrate deeply into the country, it is serious ground. When you penetrate but a little way, it is facile ground. When you have the army's stronghold on your rear and narrow passes in front, it is hemmed-in ground. When there is no place of refuge at all, it is desperate ground. On dispersive ground, inspire your men with unity of purpose. On facile ground, see that there is close connection between all parts of the army. On contentious ground, hurry up your rear guard. On open ground, keep a vigilant eye on your defenses, fearing a surprise attack. On the ground of intersecting highways, consolidate your alliances. On serious ground, ensure a continuous stream of supplies. On difficult ground, keep pushing on along the road. On hemmed-in ground, block any way of retreat to make it seem that you mean to defend the position, whereas your real intention is to burst suddenly forth through the enemy lines. In AD 532, Cao Huan, afterward emperor and canonized as Shen Wu, was surrounded by a great army under Iruchu Chao and others. His own force was comparatively small, consisting of 2,000 horse and something under 30,000 foot. The lines of investment had not been drawn very close together, gaps being left at certain points, but Cao Huan, instead of trying to escape, actually made a shift to block all the remaining outlets himself by driving into them a number of oxen and donkeys roped together. As soon as his officers and men saw that there was nothing for it but to conquer or die, their spirits rose to an extraordinary pitch of exaltation, and they charged with such desperate ferocity that the opposing ranks broke and crumbled under their onslaught. On the desperate ground, proclaim to your soldiers the hopelessness of saving their lives. The only chance of life lies in giving up all hope of it. For it is the soldier's disposition to offer the obstinate resistance when surrounded. To fight hard he cannot help himself, and to obey promptly when he has fallen into danger. In AD 73, when Pan Chao arrived at Shanshan, Quang, the king of the country, received him at first with great politeness and respect. But shortly afterwards, his behavior underwent a sudden change, and he became remiss and negligent. Pan Chao spoke about this to his officers and his suite. "Have you not noticed," he says, "that Quang's polite intentions are on the wane? This must signify that envoys have come from the northern barbarians, and that consequently he is in a state of indecision, not knowing with which side to throw his lot. That surely is the reason the truly wise man, we are told, can perceive things before they come to pass. How much more than those that are already manifest. Thereupon he called one of the natives who had been assigned to his service and set a trap for him, saying, "Where are those envoys from the Hiswang Nu who arrived some days ago?" The man was so taken back by between surprise and fear that he presently blurted out the whole truth. Pan Chow, keeping his informant carefully under lock and key, then summoned a general gathering of his officers, 36 in all, and they began drinking with them. When the wine had mounted to their heads a little, he tried to rouse their spirits still further by addressing them thus: "Gentlemen, we are in the heart of an isolated region, anxious to achieve riches and honor by some great exploit. Now it happens that an ambassador from the Hiswing Nu arrived in this kingdom only a few days ago. And the result is that the respectful courtesy extended towards us by our royal host has disappeared. Should this envoy prevail upon him to seize our party and hand us over to the Hiswang Nu, our bones will become food for the wolves of the desert. What are we to do?" With one accord, the officers replied, "Standing as we do in peril of our lives, we will follow our commander through life and death." We cannot enter into alliance with neighboring princes until we are acquainted with their designs. We are not fit to lead an army on the march unless we are familiar with the face of the country, its mountains and forests, its pitfalls and precipices, its marshes and swamps. We shall be unable to turn natural advantages into account unless we make use of local guides. To be ignorant of any of these following 4 or 5 principles does not benefit a warlike prince. When a warlike prince attacks a powerful state, his generalship shows itself in preventing the concentration of the enemy's forces. He overawes his opponents, and their allies are prevented from joining against him. In attacking a powerful state, you can divide her forces. You will have a superiority in strength. If you have a superiority in strength, you will overawe the enemy. If you overawe the enemy, the neighboring states will be frightened. And if the neighboring states are frightened, the enemy's allies will be prevented from joining her. Hence, he does not strive to ally himself with all and sundry, nor does he foster the power of other states. He carries out his own secret designs, keeping his antagonists in awe. Thus, he is able to capture the cities and overthrow their kingdoms, bestow rewards without regard to rule, issue orders without regarding to previous arrangements, and you will be able to handle the whole army as though you had to do with a single man. In order to prevent treachery, your arrangements should not be divulged beforehand. There should be no fixity in your rules and arrangements. Confront your soldiers with the deed itself, and never let them know your design. When the outlook is bright, bring it before their eyes, but tell them nothing when the situation is gloomy. Place your army in the deadly peril, and it will survive. Plunge it into desperate straits, and it will come through in safety. In 204 BC, Han Hisin was sent against the army of Chow, and he halted 10 miles from the mouth of the Qing Hising Pass, where the enemy had mustered a full force. Here, at midnight, he detached a body of 2,000 light cavalry, every man of which was furnished with a red flag. Their instructions were to make their way through a narrow defiles and to keep secret watch on their enemy. When the men of Chow see me in full flight, Han Hisin said, they will abandon their fortifications and give chase. This must be the sign for you to rush in, pluck down the Chow standards, and set up these red banners of Han in their stead. Turning then to his other officers, he remarked, our adversary holds strong position and is not likely to come out and attack us unless he sees the standard and drums of the commander-in-chief. For fear I should turn back and escape through the mountains. So saying, he first of all sent out a division consisting of 10,000 men and ordered them to form a line in battle with their backs to the River T. Seeing this maneuver, the whole army of Chow broke into loud laughter. By this time, it was broad daylight, and Han Hissen, displaying the Generalissimo flag, marched out of the pass with drums beating and was immediately engaged by the enemy. A great battle followed, lasting for some time until at length Han Hissen and his colleague Chang Ni, leaving drums and banners on the field, fled to the division of the riverbank where another fierce battle was raging. The enemy rushed out to pursue them and to secure the trophies, thus denuding their ramparts of men. But the two generals succeeded in joining the other army, which was fighting with the utmost desperation. The time had now come for the 2,000 horsemen to play their part, and soon they saw the men of the Chow following up their advantage. They galloped behind deserted walls, tore up the enemy flags, and replaced them with those of Han. When the Chow army turned back from their pursuit, and the sight of these red flags struck them with terror, convinced that the Hans had got in and overpowered their king, they broke up in wild disorder, every effort of their leader to stay the panic being in vain. Then the Han army fell on them from both sides and completed the rout, killing a great number and capturing the rest, among whom was King Ya himself. After the battle, some of Han Sin's officers came to him and said, "In the art of war, we are told to have a hill or tumulus to the right rear and a river or marsh on the left front. You, on the contrary, ordered us to draw up our troops with the river at our back. Under these conditions, how did you manage to gain this victory?" And the general replied, "I fear you gentlemen have not studied the art of war with sufficient care. Is it not written there that place your army in a deadly peril and it will survive, and plunge it into desperate straits and it will come through to safety? Had I taken the usual course, I should never have been able to bring my colleagues round. If I had not placed my troops in positions where they were obliged to fight for their own lives, but they had allowed each man to follow his own discretion, there would have been a general rout, and it would have been impossible to do anything with them." The officers admitted to force of his argument and said, "These are higher tactics than we should have been capable of. For it is precisely when a force has fallen into harm's way that it is capable of striking a blow for victory. Success in warfare is gained by carefully accommodating ourselves to the enemy's purpose. The enemy shows an inclination to advance. Lure him on to do so. If he is anxious to retreat, delay on purpose that he may carry out his intention. By persistently hanging on the enemy's flank, we shall succeed in the long run in killing the commander-in-chief, a vital act in war. On the day you take up your command, block the frontier passes, destroy the official tallies, and stop the passage of all emissaries, either to or from the enemy's country. Be stern in the council chamber so that you may control the situation. If the enemy leaves an open door, you must rush in. Forestall your opponents by seizing what he holds dear and subtly contrive to time his arrival on the ground. Walk in the path defined by rule and accommodate yourself to the enemy until you can fight a decisive battle. At first, then, exhibit the coyness of a maiden until the enemy gives you an opening. Afterwards, emulate the rapidity of a running hare, and it will be too late for the enemy to oppose you. Chapter 12. Attack by fire. There are 5 ways of attacking with fire. The first is to burn soldiers in their camps. The second is to burn stores. The third is to turn baggage trains. The fourth is to burn arsenals and magazines. The fifth is to hurl dropping fire on the enemy. While Pan Chao was still in Schwajan, determined to end the extreme peril caused by the arrival of the envoy from the northern barbarian Hussein Nu. He explained to his officers, "Never venture, never win. Unless you enter the tiger's lair, you cannot get a hold of the tiger's cubs. The only course open to us now is to make an assault by fire on the barbarians under a cover of night, when they will not be able to discern our numbers. Profiting by their panic, we shall exterminate them completely. This will cool the king's courage and cover us with glory, besides ensuring the success of our mission." The officers were eager to follow him, but pointed out that it would be necessary to discuss the matter first with the chief ministers. Pan Chao then fell into a passion. "It is today," he cried, "that our fortunes must be decided. The chief minister is only a humdrum civilian who, on hearing of our project, will certainly be afraid, and everything will be brought to light. An inglorious death is no worthy fate for a valiant warrior." Accordingly, as soon as night came, he and his little band quickly made their way to the barbarian camp. A strong gale was blowing at the time. Pan Chao ordered 10 of the party to take drums and to hide behind the enemy's barracks. It being arranged that when they saw flames shoot up, they should begin drumming and yelling with all their might. To the rest of his men, armed with bows and crossbows, he posted in ambuscade of the gate of the camp, and then set fire to the place from the windward side. Whereupon a deafening noise of drums and shouting arose on the front and rear of the enemy, who rushed to pell-mell in frantic disorder. Pan Chao slew 3 of the men with his own hand, while his companions cut off the heads of the envoy and 30 of his suite. The remainder, more than 100 in all, perished in the flames. The following day, Pan Chao went back and informed Cao Husun, the minister-chief, of what he had done, and later the latter was greatly alarmed and turned pale, but Pan Chao, divining his thoughts, said in uplifted hand, "Although you did not go with us last night, I should not think, sir, of taking sole credit of our exploits." This satisfied Cao Husun, and Pan Chao, having sent for Quang, king of Shanshan, showed him the head of the barbarian envoy, and the whole kingdom was seized with fear and trembling, which Pan Chao took steps to ally by issuing public proclamation. Then, taking the king's son as a hostage, he returned to make a report of his own king. In order to carry out an attack with fire, we must have means available. The material for raising fire should always be kept in the readiness. There is a proper there you go. You guys constructing your go bags, think about that. We must have means available, and the material for raising fire should always be kept in readiness. There is a proper season for making attacks with fire, and special days for starting a conflagration. The proper season is when the weather is very dry. The special day is when the moon and the constellations of the sieve, the wall, the wing, the crossbar, for these 4 are all days of rising wind. In attacking with fire, one should be prepared to meet 5 possible developments. The fire breaks out inside the enemy's camp. Respond at once with an attack from without. If there is an outbreak of fire and the enemy soldiers remain quiet, bide your time and do not attack. When the force of the flames has reached its height, follow it up with an attack. If that is practicable, if not, stay where you are. If it is possible to make an assault with fire from without, do not wait for it to break within, but deliver your attack at a favorable moment. When you start a fire, be to the windward of it. Do not attack the leeward. If the wind is in the east, begin burning to the east of the enemy, and follow up the attack yourself from that side. If you start the fire on the east side and attack from the west, you will suffer in the same way as your enemy does. A wind that rises in the daytime lasts long, but a night breeze soon falls. In every army, the 5 developments connected with fire must be known, the movements of the stars calculated, and a watch kept for the proper days. Those who use fire as an aid to the attack show intelligence, and those who use water as an aid to the attack gain an ascension of strength by means of water. The enemy may be intercepted but not robbed of all of his belongings. Unhappy is the fate of one who tries to win battles and succeeds in his attacks without cultivating the spirit of enterprise, for the result is waste of time and general stagnation. The enlightened ruler lays his plans well ahead. The good general cultivates his resources. He controls his soldiers by his authority. He knits them together in good faith by rewards and make him serviceable. If faith decays, there will be disruption. If rewards are deficient, commands will not be respected. Move not unless you see an advantage. Use not your troops unless there is something to be gained, and fight not unless the position is critical. No ruler should put his troops in the field merely to gratify his own spleen. No general should fight a battle simply out of pique. Anger may in time change to gladness. Vexation may be succeeded by content, but a kingdom that has once been destroyed can never come again into being, nor can the dead ever be brought back to life. Hence the enlightened ruler is heedful, and the good general full of caution. This is the way to keep a country at peace and an army intact. Chapter 13, The Use of Spies. Raising a host of 100,000 men and marching them great distances entails heavy loss on the people and drain on the resources of the state. The daily expenditure will amount to 1,000 ounces of silver. There will be a commotion at home and abroad, and men will drop down exhausted on the highways. As many as 700,000 families will be impeded by the labor. Hostile armies may face each other for years, striving for victories that are decided in a single day. This being so, to remain in ignorance of the enemy's condition is simply because one grudges the outlay of 100 ounces of silver in honor and in emoluments is the height of inhumanity. One who acts thus is no leader of men, no present help of his sovereign, no master of victory. What enables the wise sovereign and the good general to strike and to conquer and achieve things beyond the reach of ordinary men is foreknowledge. Now, this foreknowledge cannot be elicited from the spirits. It cannot be obtained inductively from experience, nor by any deductive calculation. Knowledge of the enemy's disposition can only be obtained from other men. Knowledge of the spirit world is to be attained by divination. Information in natural sciences may be sought by inductive reasoning. The laws of the universe can be verified by mathematical calculation, but the disposition of the enemy are ascertainable through spies and spies alone. Hence the use of spies, of whom there are five classes: the local spies, the internal spies, the converted spies, the doomed spies, surviving spies. When these 5 kinds are all at work, none can discover the secret system. This is called the divine manipulation of the threads. It is the sovereign's most precious faculty. Having local spies means employing the service of the inhabitants of a district, the enemy's country, win people over by kind treatment and use them as spies. Having inward spies means making use of the officials of the enemy, worthy men who have been degraded from office, criminals who have undergone punishment, also favorite concubines who are greedy for gold, men who are aggrieved at being subordinate positions, or who have been passed over in the distribution of posts, others who are anxious that their side should be defeated in order that they may have a chance of displaying their ability and talent, fickle turncoats who always want to have a foot in each boat. Officials of these several kinds should be secretly approached and bound to one's interest by means of rich presents. In this way, you will be able to find out the state of affairs in the enemy's country, ascertain the plans that are being formed against you, and moreover, disturb the harmony and create breaches between the sovereign and his ministers. But there is a necessity for extreme caution in dealing with inward spies. Lo Shang, the governor of Aichu, sent his general Wei Po to attack rebel Li Hisung of Shu in a stronghold at Pai. After each side had experienced a number of victories and defeats, the rebel leader Li Hisung had recourse to the services of a certain Pai Tao, a native Sutu, who began by having him whipped until blood came and then sent him off to the enemy. Lo Shang, whom he was to delude by offering to cooperate with him from inside the city and then give the fire signal at the right moment for making a general assault. Lo Shang, believing the promises of this inward spy, marched out all of his troops and placed General Wei and others at their head with orders to attack Pao Tai's bidding. Meanwhile, Li Husung had prepared an ambuscade, and Po Tai, having reared long scalding ladders against the city walls, now lighted a beacon fire. Not knowing they were betrayed, Wei Mei's men raced up upon seeing the signal and began climbing the ladders just as fast as they could, while others were drawn up by ropes lowered from above. More than 100 of the soldiers entered the city in this way, and everyone whom was forthwith beheaded. The rebel leader Li Sang then charged with all his forces both inside and outside the city and routed the enemy completely. Having converted spies means getting a hold of the enemy's spies and using them for your own purposes by means of heavy bribe and liberal promises, detaching them from the enemy's services and inducing them to carry back false information, as well as to spy in turns on their own countrymen. Having doomed spies means doing certain things openly for purposes of deception, and allowing our old spies to know of them, and when betrayed, report them to the enemy. The old-fashioned mole hunt, that's what it sounds like here. Just watch a Mission Impossible movie, any one of them. They're all the same fucking movie. We do things calculated to deceive our own spies. We must be led to believe that they all have been unwittingly disclosed. Then, when their spies are captured in the enemy lines, they will make an entire false report, and the enemy will take measures accordingly, only to find out that we do something quite different. The spies will thereupon be put to death. Surviving spies are those who bring back news from the enemy's camp. This is ordinary class of spies who should form a regular part of the army. Your surviving spy must be a man of keen intellect, though in outward appearance a fool, of shabby exterior, but with a will of iron. He must be active, robust, endowed with physical strength and courage, although accustomed to all sorts of dirty work, able to endure hunger and cold, and to put him with shame in ignominy. Ignominy. Once the Emperor Cao Su sent Xiao Hisai Wu to spy upon his enemy in Shen Wu of Qi. Wu was accompanied by 2 other men. All 3 were on horseback and wore the enemy's uniform. When it was dark, they dismounted a few hundred feet away from the enemy's camp and stealthily crept up to listen until they succeeded in catching the passwords used by the army. Then they got on their horses again and boldly passed through the camp under the guise of the night watchman, and more than once happening to come across the soldier who was committing some breach of discipline. They actually stopped to give a culprit sound cudgeling Thus, they managed to return with the fullest possible information about the enemy's disposition, and they received warm commendation from the Emperor, who, in consequence of their report, was able to inflict a severe defeat on his adversary. There must be no more intimate relations in the whole army than those maintained with spies. With other relations should be more liberally rewarded. In no other relation should greater secrecy be preserved. Spies can not be usefully employed without a certain intuitive sagacity. Before using spies, we must assure ourselves that their integrity of character and the extent of their experience and skill, a brazen face and a crafty disposition, are more dangerous than mountains or rivers. It takes men of genius to penetrate such. They cannot be properly managed without benevolence and straightforwardness, without subtle ingenuity of mind. One cannot make certain of the truth of their reports. Be subtle, and use your spies for every kind of business. If a secret piece of news is divulged by a spy before the time is ripe, he must be put to death with the person to whom the secret was told. Whether the object be to crush an army, to storm a city, or to assassinate an individual, it is always necessary to begin by finding out the names of the attendants, the aides-de-camps, the doorkeepers, the sentries of the general in command. Our spies must be commissioned to ascertain these. The enemy spies who have come to spy on us must be sought out, tempted with bribes, led away, comfortably housed. Thus they will become converted spies and available for our service. It is through the information brought by the converted spy that we are able to acquire and employ local and inward spies. We must tempt the converted spy into our service, because it is who knows which of the local inhabitants are greedy of gain and which of the officials are open to corruption. It is owing to this information, again, that we can use the doomed spy to carry false tidings to the enemy. Lastly, it is by his information that the surviving spy can be used on appointed occasions. The end and aim of spying in all the 5 varieties is knowledge of the enemy, and this knowledge can only be derived of the first instance from the converted spy. He not only brings information himself, but makes it possible to use other kinds of spies to advantage. Hence, it is essential that the converted spy be treated with the utmost liberality. Of old, the rise of Yin dynasty was due to Ai Qi, who had served under the Hsia. Likewise, the rise of Chao dynasty was due to Yu La, who had served under the Yin. Hence, it is only the enlightened ruler and the wise general who will use the highest intelligence of the army for purposes of spying, and thereby they achieve great results. Spies are the most important element in war, because upon them depends the army's ability to move. So that's it. The Art of War by the great Sun Tzu. John Towers. This is the Abracast. I'll let Hilla tell you the rest.
Thank you for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed the show. Please send an email or find us on social media and let us know what you think about the show. We would appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star rate and review wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You can find Stigmata Studios, graphic, novels, and comic books Take control of your destiny. Understand your past, put your present in context, and know your future with a twist. Check out the Abracast Tarot Card Deck. Your body is your temple, so let's make sure you got a badass t-shirt on it. Variety of cool occult themed t-shirts and other merch like stickers, wall art, mugs, and more. Welcome to the Red Archive. Get access to over 50 hours of archived episodes, more bonus audio, additional exclusive content. All this for only $1 a month. Are you interested in the occult, history, conspiracy, and violence? Learn more at Abracast.com.